Namaste and welcome to Sanhita Vyas ji. She is a resource person for Indica courses, but also a brilliant entrepreneur in her own right. Has set up a language learning e-hub and is helping both promote and support the learning of Sanskritam for application in multiple settings. Thank you, Sanhita ji, for being with us today.
Namaste, Aparna ji.
How did your journey in teaching Sanskritam start, Sanhita ji, apart from the learning?
For teaching, basically, I started teaching right from the bachelor's in Sanskrit itself. We had these workshops being conducted, and teaching was something what I was looking forward to every time. So, for me, teaching has always been a passion, and I started teaching basic Sanskrit to my family members. Uh, that is how the journey towards teaching started for me.
When it comes to teaching of Sanskritam, there are different views on how it should be taught in the modern context. So, some resource or teachers are of the view that it should be taught only in Sanskrit, and you don't teach the language with explanations in Hindi or the local language or in English. But that becomes difficult where children are not multilingual. So what are your thoughts?
Teaching Sanskrit in Sanskritam itself is a great idea, of course, but not everyone can cope up with that. So, teaching strategy can change. I personally believe that clearing the basic idea of Sanskrit can help people grasp the language very well. So, while I start teaching, I generally take any Indian language, say Hindi or Gujarati or even Marathi in that case. I'll see the comfort of the learner and then go ahead in only Sanskrit. So I'll go Sanskritam through Sanskritam only after a certain point of time and not from day one to make the learner comfortable.
In our in the school curriculums, if you see how languages are taught today, the foreign languages are taught in terms of how to apply the language. When they're teaching German or French, they talk about day-to-day uses of the language, how to ask for a certain food or how to converse with people. But our languages are taught in terms of literature. We are taught stories, we are taught poetry. Why do you think there's a different pedagogy for our languages?
So in general, also while we start learning anything, I mean Sanskrit when it starts, generally all the schools have starting Sanskrit from grade 4 or 5, which is comparatively late than all the other languages. So they directly start giving literature in Sanskrit. But then, as the foreign languages are taught, at least if there is some basic conversation happening in that particular language, it becomes easier. But also because of the Indian culture in which we all are, learning the things in day to day life, the connecting things to the Bharatiya Bhasha, Sanskrit becomes easier to learn through literature also. Some literature may fascinate a learner and they come into the language, they start speaking the language and much more. But yeah, it should ideally be taught from the very basics and only then taken ahead to the literature or higher part of the literature.
One more observation. So, this is my observation as a parent of children learning different languages is that we come to grade 10 without knowing how to speak the language fluently. We
Yes.
can read the script, but our vocabulary and our spoken knowledge is very rudimentary. So, how do we fix that? How do we
Uh,
fix that
a
gap?
daily so daily conversations in the language, plus not just the grammar part but also something interesting in a language would be more much more better than only the textual knowledge. The experience of a language comes only when you listen to the songs in that language, only when you try speaking something in the language, having such type of conversations. In case of Sanskrit, you have stotras, we also have a lot of songs and much more other things. So because of the textual thing, students nowadays are only and only referring to what will come in the examination. And in case of all the languages, uh, the third languages which the children are learning these days, everything is not everything is just on the MCQ questions, just the multiple choice questions, and not a very elaborated thing. Because of that, they are not able to speak in the language, because they are just understanding the concept and completing it. That's one of the hurdles which is faced by today's children. But because of the NEP 2020, these things are going to fall in place gradually. This is what I have been observing for a few months in a few schools.
So, what is? Could you tell us about your e-hub and what does it aim to achieve in terms of who is the audience that you're looking at? Is it the mid-level scholar who wants to get back to languages or wants to use language to interpret texts, or is it somebody who wants to study Sanskritam for itself as a language?
So the motto behind starting something like this came when I was teaching in a school, and I was not quite, I was not satisfied with the syllabus or the flow of the textbook, how it goes. So E-Lingua Hub basically aims at teaching Sanskritam in various ways, starting from, we don't have any particular age group or any particular audience. Any age group starting from 3 years and above is most welcome. So basically, hobby-based Sanskrit learning. We also teach academic Sanskrit. We also have made our own levels, saying 1, 2, 3, 4, as we have German. I have also done German till B2. So which has also inspired me to make Sanskrit systematized as in the same pattern, which gives a very clear idea of how a language can go ahead and how it can be learned. So that is what inspired me to start something where I can design my own syllabus, I can create the notes, and I can take it ahead accordingly. So we have been teaching a lot of children starting from 3 years of age, and now they have starting conversing in Sanskrit. In a year and a half, they at least start speaking in Sanskrit, and gradually their families are also accepting that and taking them ahead accordingly.
And what is the role of rote learning in the learning of Sanskritam? Most
Okay.
of our the mantras or the songs that we are taught, we don't understand the meaning, and only at a later stage when we are looking for a philosophical or spiritual meaning do we actually go into the artha of what we are chanting. So, how important is this introducing it at a younger age? Could you understand the question?
So rote learning has a very beautiful term here. One more beautiful term which is known as oral tradition. Just mugging. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay. So, in Sanskrit, we have a beautiful term named Maukhik Parampara. So, this oral tradition, or what we call rote learning as of now, comes from the Vedic Parampara itself. So, Maukhik Parampara is something that you learn the things and then go ahead. So, it has its own importance, considering that the Vedas were initially the only Maukhik Parampara, they were transmitted only orally, and there was nothing as, I mean, they were not written initially. So but the system in which they were chanted, it had a very beautiful system. To chant a particular mantra also, there were 8 different ways of chanting it. So there is no chance of that mantra being wrong or going giving another meaning, or
Mhm.
that is what is done now also. If you visit any of the pathshalas here in Bharat or anywhere wherever it is, the day you enroll your child there, they'll start with the Maukhika Parampara or Kanthastikaranam of Amarakosham. Amarakosham is a text where you have a lot of synonyms, dictionary basically. So you just chant that. Once you are done with the chanting, only then you start understanding it. So there is one thing at a time happening there. And the importance of it is it improves your memory if done right from the childhood. So Maukhiki Parampara has been one of the best techniques to learn anything. Because if you already know something, understanding it going ahead becomes easier.
But is it difficult at a later age? Do we change the system a bit if somebody has not been like a non-Indian, if they have not been initiated early? Would it come easily even at a later stage?
It comes by practice. It's not something which is not achievable. It is totally achievable, but it needs that particular dedication to go ahead. Today not everyone focuses on learning something. Understanding comes first, and only then you learn something. But Sanskrit being a language which has a lot of mantras and shlokas and a lot of texts coming in, and everything what has been explained in Sanskrit, say it science or mathematics, anything, all these subjects have been described, have been written in the form of shlokas or mantras. So the first step in Sanskrit should always be learning something. If you mug up something, then understanding it and applying it becomes easier.
So, in your new course which you're about to start, I'm pretty keen on enrolling myself because it gives a background to my work, which is to look at Indian knowledge systems and interview people who are change makers in different fields. So, how the course which looks at Sanskritam only to get entry into Indian knowledge system, how would you structure that course? Because the field itself is so huge. How did you cut it down and give it a shape?
So the course which I'm about to start with Indica, the Indian Knowledge Systems vocabulary based course. So I am focusing specifically on the vocabulary based on Indian knowledge systems. So vocabulary, as in there are a lot of words which are misinterpreted while they were developing. So, taking a very small example of the word dharma. Dharma is a word which is found in Vedas, but dharma has never been, it can never be translated or understood or used as religion. It has its own meaning. So, understanding that meaning, understanding the development of the word, and using dharma as dharma in English or in any language you use. The same way, there are n number of words: Danam, Karma, Purana, Itihasa. Itihasa is not just history, it has its own beautiful meaning. The same way, Danam is not donation. So, IKS, understanding what IKS is, Indian knowledge systems, or a Bharatiya Jnana Parampara, understanding the basics of it, and what all do we have. It is an unending topic. IKS is an unending topic. You can just choose a particular thing and go ahead, but understanding the introduction to it is what is this course about. So bringing it only, limiting it to vocabulary is also giving it a lot of other it is also giving a lot of scope to understand how the words are developed. Because at times, while it is developing, and it's like Chinese whispers. The thing I start saying, by the end, by the time it again reaches to me, it is totally changed. So bringing that again into place is something what I wish to convey to the like-minded people or the learners who are wishing to know more about it. That would be one of the best steps towards understanding Indian knowledge systems better, and also its applicability for sure.
Sanhita, one a question which I was thinking about was the same word. in different contexts, even within IKS, has different meanings because there's a philosophy from which it emanates. Like, if you, to give you a simple example, if you take a word from the Shakta tradition and you look at it from the Vaishnava tradition, the same word being in Sanskrit has two different interpretations. If not a word, or maybe a phrase or a. Uh, is Sanskritam to be isolated from the philosophy of that usage? How do we deal with this? And is it necessary to have a guru in that tradition to interpret it for us, or would some a course like yours help us in some way to know differences?
So basically, it is about a perspective. Of course, there is one single term being used in two different meanings in both in the two different traditions. That's absolutely correct. So it has its own context being coming from various texts of that particular tradition. So yes, if it is coming from a particular text, some guidance related to that text is needed. Secondly, of course, knowing Sanskritam as a language is also important in these terms to understand the exact context of that particular thing. Unless you know the language, we won't be able to understand the exact meaning of it. So that is what is needed, one. And of course, a guru for understanding that particular perspective is much appreciated. So here, this course is focusing on the introductory part of it, going into the deep knowledge of any of these terms, and understanding that particular word through various perspectives is something what I am trying to cover. I already took a IKS course before this. So yeah, I mean, in that course also I tried covering various perspectives, philosophical perspective or Vedic perspective, or also a perspective through Puranas. That how is that particular word used in Puranas and Smritis. So yeah, according to perspective, the meaning changes in various traditions.
Another is the sanctity of the language and of the sound. And it's, a lot of our gurus tell us that when we chant, the mouth or the tongue that chants the Veda or the mantras should not, talk about certain other things, or, not say certain things. So be casual about life. So the language becomes a vehicle for value systems also. So we are carriers of a very big tradition. We are representatives, and when we chant, it is supposed to transform us. And it's not just about getting it right. It's not just about its usage, but it's supposed to actually change how we are as people. So, do you think that is something that is actually accepted today?
Actually, that won't be accepted very easily. It needs a lot of principle based living, if at all we think of some doing
Exactly.
something like this. But yes, in general, I what I have experienced is knowing Sanskrit itself makes your life a bit, more of sattvic. So then, in general, also Sanskrit itself is making you so that you won't go into something which is not needed, or you won't speak something like that. But that happens naturally, and there is nothing which can stop you from saying something. Or yeah, but Sanskrit itself has its own effects, and it makes everything very sattvic. Also, the thinking changes, the calmness, and a lot of other things which come naturally, and they can sometimes not be explained in words also. It's an experience which comes to you while you are in the process.
Sure. As maybe a last question, at we have an organization called Heritage Parampara, which does an annual temple festival, and our next year's theme is Akshara Devatas. So, what is your idea about aksharas and the relation with devatas, and how is Sanskritam a different language from any other language when you think of this kind of association?
Akshara Devatas, yes. In the southern part of India, you must be knowing it very well that we have the Akshara Puja while you start the academics. So that has been an ancient tradition going on. So yes, Akshara Devata is something which is a very beautiful concept which has come down today also, and people are celebrating that. Apart from that, Sanskrit is the best language which gives you the wholesome view of all the related things.
What about the letters itself of the language being representative of a deity? Like if you take our vowels, if you take the other letters, and each one representing maybe a devi or a devata, is that something that is taught? While I have never heard it being taught while we learned Sanskrit. So,
It's not taught generally. The thing is, it it the process basically when you start learning Sanskritam at any age, you start learning it through alphabets. So it has its own categories and everything, but it has never been thought that this akshara represents this devata. But when you go ahead, go to higher studies of Sanskrit, this is what comes in, and it is generally through that experience, or going into those higher studies. But initially, if we try connecting with the devata and aksharam to the kids or to anyone who is not aware of this concept, it becomes very overwhelming, or the people won't be able to take Sanskritam as a language, or they won't be able to accept it as a language in which one can converse. That is something what I have seen, because there is a beautiful kosha in Marathi which we call it as Bharatiya Samskriti Kosha. So it is a very elaborated course. Whatever term you are looking for, you just find it and you can refer to it. It is very beautifully explained. So at the starting of you will find a beautiful description of what exactly is, or what ka exactly is. So that at this moment when I know Sanskritam, I have that background and I read that, I find it very beautiful. But when I started Sanskrit 13, 14 years back, if I would have seen that, oh my god, this is something what I cannot go ahead with. So yeah.
is there any last message that you would like to give for students who want to know more about the IKS course? Any details that you think they should know, and how, especially non-Indians, if they want to enroll?
So yes, the IKS course coming up is going to talk about the basics of the Indian knowledge systems, which is the Bharatiya Jnana Parampara. And yes, we are going to try and understand a few vocabulary, few terms which are non-translatables, and how are they developed, and what is the importance of those terms. And of course, knowing Sanskrit is not a mandatory thing to enroll to the course. If someone has the knowledge and is enrolling to the course, it's of course a good thing. But Sanskrit as a language, the knowledge of Sanskrit is not important to enroll to the course. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sanhita ji, for this lovely introduction, and I hope a lot of us benefit and enroll and benefit from your course. Thank
Thank
you
you
for
so much.
making time.
Thank you. Namaste.